Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor to be here. I think with a lot of people who've been involved in driving investments in Ukraine in this very, very critical moment for my country. What I would like to focus in my presentation today about the reform agenda and the dynamics of investments in Ukraine so far. Despite a lot of skepticism and the critics, I think there is a lot of things being achieved and been, as the President already stated, it's been recognized by international partners such as IMF, European Union, United States. In order to coordinate the efforts of reform, very, very comprehensive, and we need to understand that over 24 years, Ukraine been extremely far away from different reforms, we established National Reform Council, which unites President, Prime Minister, with the whole cabinet, Parliament, and civil society around the table, discussing in a very heated discussions different reforms, identifying the priority and executing. We already held 11 meetings. We already execution of the decisions of national, it's about above 90%. And we've seen a lot of progress around the reforms, and let me stop on a few of them. One of them, and probably the top reform and number one priority for Ukraine, is fighting corruption. President already stated about this in his introduction, but it consists of two very important aspects. One is actually prosecution, which is due challenging. At the same time, the necessary institution being established with the speed which many countries have not seen before. We established National Anti-Corruption Bureau, where we selected through the open competition the head of the National Anti-Corruption Bureau, 50 detectives already going through the training, and the full operation of the National Anti-Corruption Bureau will be in October. We're waiting the selection of the anti-corruption prosecutor in October, November. It depends on the Commission. We have an anti-corruption prevention being established committee, which is again critical. Many government officials have very vague understanding what's the code of ethics, very little understanding what's allowed and not allowed, and again, prevention and running a big national campaign, that's the subject that was discussed at the National Reform Council last Friday. The second item is the rule of law, and this is a big topic, again, for many investors and a lot of conversation. ND represents the American Chamber of Commerce. We have European Business Association, and the voice of international community is loud and clear about rule of law. We do have the challenge in the court system. And that's why at the beginning of the year we passed the law on the court, which is about relates to certification of judges or attestation of judges. We waiting in October to receive a final conclusion from the Venice Commission on the two proposals for the changes in the constitution related to the court system. And we're expecting to hold a National Reform Council on this at the end of October, which allow us to push the necessary steps, which we'll be talking about removing immunity from the judges, which is a very strange thing which exists in Ukrainian system. A very interesting aspect which was done last year back in November. The President proposed removing one of his very powerful influence, a general observation of the prosecuting officer. Very often it's neglected and we tend to forget, but previously we had a former Soviet Union system where anybody, any prosecutor, can go to any company and check it, just because it's a general observation. These rights have been removed. Today, general prosecutor cannot go to or do any investigation without the kick-off investigation, provided evidences and etc. It's not happen, and it's very important for a lot of companies. When we go into the ease of doing business, and again, I will try to focus on the reform agenda related particularly to the business area, so I'm not going to touch a lot of healthcare things, even though this is a very attractive opportunity for investment. First, it's we're reducing it from more than 2,400 to 600. From 2,400 to 600 services. It means that the services needs to be concentrated, to be limited to the very essential and needed. And those who've been subject to the corruption are removed. We kicked off a discussion about tax reform. And I know that a lot of people who invested here have been raising this question. Many investors come to me. I just come from London and Berlin, when there is a lot of business community ask me, what's about this? First of all, all proposals that are on the table is about reducing taxes. Reducing taxes. Taxes, so there will be reduction of the taxes. Second, it's a simplicity and transparency on the payment. It also retaining on simplified tax procedure, which have been very critical for small and medium businesses. The discussion is about some rates, to which extent, how radical we would go in the reduction of taxes, and we would expect in a significant discussion with the Parliament more closer to the end of years. We will be addressing the budget. But very important for investors, there will be reduction of taxes. Areas, and as well the administration of taxes. A unity across the coalition, President and Prime Minister, is that we need to simplify and address how the tax administration is managed. A lot of corruption there, a lot of non-transparency, introduction of the system that will enable us to run into absolutely different, including reduction of the fiscal service in Ukraine. Just to give you numbers, at average, the top taxpayers who contribute the biggest amount of their revenue to the state budget is 1.5 thousand companies, and we have 60,000 employees in state revenue collection services, right? And it's ridiculous to have such a huge number for actually very small critical mass of the companies. And this is, again, been a priority for Prime Minister as a primary area. Customs, Mikhail Saakashvili already addressed that, has been a subject of heavy conversation in the high cabinets about what we need to do to remove a lot of corruption on the customs. Decentralization, the topic which again probably is driven in a lot of about empowerment to the regions. We already provided 38% more budget to the regions, which means more decision makers about investments will be done regionally, and the focus of the President is to give even more empowerment to the regions. Why this is important? Because we believe that nobody, it's ridiculous when somebody sitting in the Kiev needs to decide how and which road will be paved in the sub-region in Odessa Oblast. It's ridiculous, and we would like to remove that and give the full empowerment about healthcare, education, and a lot of areas, to including social infrastructure, to the region. Financial reform, again, the governor already highlighted some of them, but let me underline. First, independence of National Bank, a true independence of the National Bank. Second, I think Ms. Gunter is probably an example of the cutting budget. This year, they are saving 6 billion hryvnias from their budget that's been allocated to the National Bank. Just think about the number. It's a basically cutting cost exercise. And she is following the absolutely new approach of Ukrainian government. We passed the law on the strengthening compliance of the shareholders of the banks, disclosure of the beneficiary. We passed the law on disclosure beneficiary of the media. There is more and more activities strengthening into the financial sector, where corruption and fraud, I would like, because a lot of people here, and I know many of you, have been highly concerned with how the financial system be used for the fraud. A lot of focus is happening how to eliminate any possibility of the frauds that's been engaged and built into the financial systems of the banking financial system, stock exchange system, and I'm pleased to see Timur Kharmayev here, who've been leading the initiative in the National Commission for Securities, been a significant reform and transformation supported by BRD and international donors. I think he will be doing the panel later today. Very, very strong initiative to actually build a stock market in Ukraine. Initiative related to electronic systems and introduction of technology, which technology drives the transparency for a lot of things. Let me just name a few. We introduced an electronic procurement system. Electronic procurement system where anybody can participate in the tenders on the procurement. When it started as a small initiative by the civil society, today it has in total volume more than 1 billion hryvnias in the volume of transaction. We launched the system just in February. And today we participating. Regional governments are currently engaged. The leaders are Ministry of Defense and Ministry of Infrastructure. Ministry of Finance opened an e-data.gov.ua, actually a portal where you can go online and daily check the transaction of the government. So you actually can see what transactions are taking place today, who is paying to whom, and how much. And there is more because we want to build analytics behind that. The same was done with analytics in the e-procurement, which is now allow us to compare why paper purchased by one ministry is more expensive than paper for another ministry, and how we can actually consolidate that in the future procurement to save cost for the government so that there will be more money allocated to investment scenarios. E-petitions and many, many other things that's been built to build a transparency, electronic data system, electronic flow. Now I would like, and finally, state-owned enterprises. It's again, because all this subject is something that I get a lot of questions from international community. The reform of state-owned enterprises is driven by Minister of Economy. Ivers is putting a strong team behind first establishing and one of the concepts of national holding, where we'll place the companies that needs to be operated. We want to have an independent board of directors, and actually the vision is that these companies, state-owned companies, need to start making money. Today they're making loss. And it's a lot of vested interest today, and the transformation and the focus that we have is that's removing all this vested interest and actually put it into full transparency model. And what we can't manage, we sell. In 2015, 345 companies will be listed for privatization. And a lot of people challenge us that why we're not doing this procurement, why we're doing this privatization during a very difficult time economically. Today, very often this is assets which we don't make money with. It's usually property, it's badly managed. Today we have, as we've been mentioned, we do have a young people, but also the capacity of people to run it and put it in the right to the right profitability of this company is difficult. So I think that it's better, and we think that it's better to be managed by corporate, us as a state receiving the revenue, receiving the taxes and the money from privatization. So this is a vision. Stay tuned to the our state property fund. Now about investments. And again, during the war, a lot of people say, well, there is no investments. Well, surprise, surprise, there are investments in Ukraine. And they continue to go during the whole 2014 and 2015. I will try to go through a few of them just to give a glimpse, and you can talk to your people. Unfortunately, media is not very often excited about this news, and or they appear and fade quite quickly. But let me come up with a few. Dmytro has finished building a new facility, $135 million investment. This is happening. The decision of this was done in 2014, and they continue to do and finish construction. We open it in 2015. Many agriculture companies continue to do investment into the port facilities, into the storage capacity. Last year, in 2014, all agriculture companies that operated in Ukraine registered very good profit. Despite the war, actually during Davos meeting, many of them actually told me that they're extremely surprised. That they've been expecting much lower revenue, much lower income, but they see the positive results. When we are present here in Odessa, I would like to name a few things which is very often forgotten or use it as an example, because it's not only great port city, very great recreational city, but it's actually high-tech city. Very few people know that actually this is the place where the company Riddle, who makes software for Apple products, been advertised personally by Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was presenting their products on the stage when the iPad was launched. And this company is located here. Another famous case, which was happening this year, is a Luckery. $155 million investment on the technology. One of the best designed 3D printers globally is done in Odessa by a small team here. I can go on and tell a lot of interesting stories which actually indicates a lot of high-tech capacity and creativity capacity. Besides, we have Odessa, Preport, Plant, which is subject to privatization next year. There was a lot of the discussion why the intention was to do it this year, but there is a delay, postponement because we don't want to go into a situation when we have an interesting case where it will be again unexpectedly privatized by Ukrainian oligarchs. Because we truly want to see an international investor into this facility, which is extremely attractive. I just come from London. There was a good analytics presented, particularly on the point that the amount of transactions on the cargo which happening in Odessa ports is one of the top line in European ports. At the same, when we analyze the revenue that the state gets from this, it's peanuts. Finally, during the last year, one of the significant things and which drove the interest on the investment of the telecom, and stay tuned there, we're expecting some very interesting announcement in Ukraine related to the telecom from the significant players in the world, happened after 3G tender that we launched. It's been blocked for years. There was one company who held the monopoly, created by the former government. We raised 11 billion hryvnias through a 100% transparent tender. Many companies have been calling me and asking when will it be true, transparent, is it going to happen? It happened. Finally, on their problems, I give you a glimpse where we're going and what we've been able to achieve, but the problems still exist. We do have a lot of vested interest in economy, in politics. We have oligarchy which very often owning the media channels and attacking us. The young team in the cabinet of ministers who pushing agenda, who are pushing a big reforming agenda in the Odessa region. Corruption, big, rooted. People grew up with the corruption. They used to pay bribes on their chain of moving through the history of their life. And now we need to introduce a complete change of the culture. And finally, public administration reform. This is in the parliament, and we're expecting that there will be a much faster resolution to the law of the public administration, which will bring public administration to the standards of Europe, United States, Canada, and other well-known countries. So with this, if you would like to read more about Ukrainian reforms, we do publish our reports every 6 months, or now I'm actually discussing to do it on the quarterly basis. We have a progress of reform report for the 6 months published by National Reform Council, Reforms in UA. All information including plan for financial sector reform, anti-corruption reform, judicial reform, law enforcement reform. Of course, I forgot to mention the famous police, which is on the streets of Kyiv, Odessa, where it's a #1 police globally, where everybody would like to take a selfie. So if you haven't done yet, I encourage you to do that, because it's a trend. So all this package which we're driving is, again, despite the infliction that Russia is trying to do in the East, Ukraine is going towards Europe, normal international standards, transparency, and fighting corruption is a top priority. Thank you.